was going to say, but
You just be you, Chris.
yeah.
You be you.
Well, I guess my story begins the last part of September. We were gearing up for a fishing trip on George's. I had Leo Atkinson's boat, and there was a crew of us. I had Scotty Stewart and Mike Waybright and Tyler Cox Nickerson, and we got Terry Funk to go give us a hand. He's going to bait some trawl and stuff. We had fine gear. So anyway, when it comes to work, we figure we take Funk. He's an animal, and he's always up for a good laugh. So. So we got everything ready to go, and I had to call a DFO for the hail out or whatever, and they asked if I had enough room aboard the boat, and I told them no, hoping they wouldn't send anybody, but I said if they want to send him with an air mattress, tell him to come. So sure enough, he showed up with an air mattress. Stepped on a few times over the few days we were out. Anyway, so we had 6 guys aboard the boat. We had survival suits for everyone, but we only had a 4-man life raft. But wasn't thinking anything would happen. Anyway, he showed up when we was getting ready to leave. The observer jumps out and he said, "Is this the boat called the Unforgotten one?" I said, "Well, it's close, but it's the Unforgiven one." So he gets his stuff aboard and puts his mattress in there on the floor and met the crew, and away we went. We went on an adventure to George's. So on the way off, I remember talking to the observer, and he was saying this was going to be his last trip. Winter was coming, he didn't want to do it no more, and so he was going to, after this trip, he was headed out west. So this trip would surely make his mind up, I'm sure. Anyway, we fished the first day of October was our first day. We fished the 1st and 2nd. The 3rd would have been our last day. Averaged about 8,000 to 9,000 a day, probably. And there was a song that kept coming on. I got a feeling tonight's going to be a good night. And I can remember that day I said, yes, you're right. We're loading this boat and we're going home with a good trip and good weather, and we laughed the whole time. Well, before we got in, well, actually, before I skip too far ahead, that's why I got to write it down, so I'll skip ahead of myself. Funk went to cook some supper up, have it for when everybody got done hauling, like the gear or whatever, it'd be all ready for us. And so we got that all back, and the food was cooked, and we got steaming in, and Terry looked at this boat and said, "Well, that's a nice old dragger. I'd like to go on that someday." Little did we know we would all be on it. So we steamed home, and after a while, some of the crew laid down, and Mike and the observer and I, we stayed up and we yarned. But we noticed the bilge pump was still going, and we steamed for quite a long ways. And anyways, so I tried to get a seat cock going. That's just a pump that runs off the engine, and I couldn't get it going. So anyway, Mikey had gone, and he got Scotty up, and he was there just laying there as he felt like something was kind of funny there or whatever. So they come out, and both of them went over aft, and they opened up some hatches, and they opened up the lazarette over aft, and they had that full of trawl, and when they took the cover off, it was right level with water. So we never had no pumps in the lazarettes. They opened up the rudder room hatch, that was full of water. So we had one pump, that was in the fish hole, and that was full of fish and full of water, and it just wasn't keeping up, I guess. So I can remember Tyler, he come up out of the cud and he said, "Scotty, what's the problem?" Scotty said, "I don't know, but we got one." So anyways, so once we figured out we was in trouble, Mikey had passed out our survival suits, and everybody started putting them on, and I got mine on. And so once I got mine on, I gave Tyler the set to finish the Mayday that I made, and I remember Mikey was getting ready to zip his on. I grabbed the zipper and I just said, "Suck in, big guy," and I'll give a yank. Funk was so excited he jumped in his boots and all. Anyway, so after I zipped him up there, I jumped on the house there and I pushed the life raft over, and the first time I pushed over, it went between the exhaust and the bracket that holds it. I said, "This is great." So it was kind of jammed in there, it was. So we gave another push and over it went. I pulled on the rope, and after a while, you could hear it. I said, "Oh, it's got a hole in it." But it's just the air blowing it up there, whatever. So Scotty so worked out that the rope was rotting on it to hold it to the boat. He held on the raft while we were steaming along. So he was holding this big raft, and we was just, you know, we was still steaming because we knew once we took the boat out of gear, that was it. She was going to go down. And there was a bunk in the wheelhouse, and the observer had laid in that, and he kept looking out the doorway, and he said, "Do you realise the stern keeps going under?" I said, "Yeah, we realise that." So anyway, once we knew we couldn't get the water out, we made our maydays. I talked to a few people on set, and Russell Atkinson was one of them. He was the last fellow I talked to, was Russell. And see where I'm at. So anyway, once everybody started getting in the raft, I was about ready to jump in. I said, "Is everybody in?" About that time, I heard, "No, no, no." Way he come up out of the cut, it was the observer. "I forgot my phone, huh? Don't want to lose my pictures," he said. So anyway, they got him in the raft, and I took her out of gear, and I went on the set, and I said, "Russell, we're abandoning ship." And I just let everything go, and then I run back to the raft and jumped in, and they say sometimes when a boat goes down, it gets a bubble or whatever, it can haul you under. So shoved off on the raft, and we just sat there and watched it, I guess. And you could hear the sets going, people on them, and alarms going, and I'm pretty sure I heard the phone ringing, and I think that would have been Cal called it then, probably. Choked up there for some reason. Yeah. Anyway, he never got no answer, so he hung up, and he said, "Dad sunk that boat," and nobody had knew even what was going on at the time. So there we were, like Chevy, where we were in the gully. We're 60 miles from home. Had a 4-man life raft, 6 men. So I peeked in the life raft, and you got Funk, and you got Mikey, and there's 2 big boys there. So I think I'll just stay over here where it's a nice night. So anyway, me and Scotty clipped our buddy lines together just in case I happened to fall off. We wouldn't go far anyway. And Mikey asked if he mind making a prayer. So we said, "Nope, you better go." So we said one, and after that everything seemed right peaceful and quiet. And me and Mike's talking about that the other day. He said we must have just accepted what was ever going to happen to us. So anyway, by and by, we heard noise coming and looked up, and it was a plane. So I'd already let one flare go earlier, and when the plane got over, I said, "There he is." And pretty well took the wing right off him, right, making sure he sees us. Anyway, he seen us. So he dropped a bunch of flares around us, and wasn't long after that, he'd see a boat coming. Peeked up over the raft, and I said, "Gee, Russell looks some big from the water." It wasn't Russell, it was that dragger we went by. Terry wanted to go on. So anyway, he just throwed us a rope and pulled our raft over to his stern and pulled us out by one. And so I guess that song that said tonight's going to be a good night, I guess it was a good night because we're still here. We got picked up, planes found us, boats found us, and since then we've got a new boat, and it's called Lucky Night, and that would be the reason why it's named that. We got plenty of pumps, there's watertight compartments, we even got a life raft to fit all 6 of us. Somebody had asked Terry once we was in and said, "Hey Terry, did you get the dishes done?" His response was, "I left them soaking." I'm not really sure what happened, what caused the water to fill up the boat or there or whatever, but once it was there, it happened quick, and I guess make sure you got pumps and go over your safety drills, wear your PFDs, and that's pretty all I got to say.
Could I ask Terry and Mikey if they would come up as well, and would you mind coming up?